Elayyoub, Sam Elayyoub. I'm senior architect solution and DevOps engineer who's been working for the past like a year on Gett Free API. Gett Free API, it's a platform. You can call it as a service or a platform for analysis, monetize, developing, and managing of all API proxies in one place. The idea around it is to give the opportunity for developers, whoever has like multiple API services, to control them and give the applications more specifications and ability to access these APIs without getting back to these services. So let's say like an example, I just wrote an article explaining what the idea around Gett Free API. First, I'm going to talk about the API management or the APIM, and that's how we can say it. It's a way that the API get away for existing backend services. API management helps organizations publish APIs, external partner and internal developers to unlock the potential of their data and services. Let's say like, what does that mean? For an example, we're going to talk about this screenshot. So let's say like you have an Android app and another app too, iOS app and web services. And four of them, they needed access to our three APIs. In general, if we want to depend on the API itself, the API gives you URL path that you can access it. It gives you the auth, token, basic auth, whatever you need to access that information from that database. And then you apply your methods. The arrows here just showing the idea of like connections, not the idea of methods. So if it's the idea of methods, it's going to be delete, post, get patch, options, everything needs for inside the API's methods. Ability to access it within databases for security issues is going to be by tokens, headers, and other stuff that you needed to access for it. Now the idea of having Android app 1, to have access to API 1 and access to API 2, then it needs two URLs, two paths, separate information that collect inside the app itself that it can understand whenever this path going to this link, send this token for this link, and respond for me what I need data. And the same as happened for API 2. The idea around it is that if we have two tokens shared within an unsecure application, or even if it's a secure application, it's still an outsider that he can access your API 1 and 2 directly on spot as soon as he gets access to that token. Same happened with the web services. Web services, let's say like we need to modify, customize three of them. We need to access them three directly to their links. So let's say like we have this one on API blah 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 sample.com, and this API blah 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 sample.com, it needs a token to get access to it. So you can apply all the methods and you can give the application the permissions, whatever you want to control through the API 1, not before it. And this is a security issue. When we give the ability for the token to modify, delete, and do everything for methods, that means anyone got access to this token, he can remove all the data or retrieve all the data that you have in API 1. And that happened for API 2, that happened for API 3. Let's say Android app 2 needs access only for API 1 and API 3. Same situation. It needs two tokens, two paths, two URLs, two methods, or whatever, how many methods you want to access, and you send them directly to retrieve from the API 3. For the iOS app, same. And also, any app you want to add here, if you want to add a new one, for example, you need to have another token or similar to other tokens to access the API directly. The idea of having a management in the middle, it can solve your situation. So instead of directly connect them between Android to API, we can connect them to Android to a service. We call it management. And management service or platform that can give you access to any API, depend on this management system, how it's gonna work. So let's say like we're gonna, in this example, I'm working around the Gett Free API, which is my software. And it's simply a synchronic system that it can give you management, a full management that you can connect multiple API systems. If you have more than 100 plus how many services you have as APIs, you can give them one token to access them all with all the methods you need for each platform. So let's talk about it as a Gett Free API. Gett Free API is the management system that it can give you access to all APIs without giving the access to their service, which means I would give you a getfreeapi.com path that you can access API 1 with a specific token for each one of them without giving them the final end or the proxy or the reverse proxy or whatever we are going to call it, the final end API URL. In that case, we have a multi-layer or double-layer security, plus you have multiple choices to add which one of these apps can access which one of these APIs. And the idea of having management API in general, the main point for it, connecting API management to each API once with one token or one auth or one basic auth, whatever you want once, and then from here you share it to all applications, not from each one of them. Having the API management services must be a proxies and API and apps to use for all dependent app services, which means all of them would depend on this getfreeapi.com, not depending on each API. And then get full control of the API management instead. So we can add external headers that we don't want to share inside the API. We don't want to share the token that we access between this management system and this API. All what we need to do is share what Gett Free API giving us as a token, and the rest would be depending on how we connect the services or the platform to the API. Each one separate, each one different token, each one of different access or authentications. Get full control of API, that's what we're talking about. You can add headers, you can add extra body, you can add the token if it's directly by bearer. Bearer authentications, that's the auth or the main auth 2. For a new API, we just connect the API once, and apps and services that can use this API. So let's say like we have these 3 already exist in the management, and we create a new API for that management. All what we need to do is just giving the access from this Android to access Gett Free API. And behind it, depend on the path that this Android gonna send it, it will pick which one it needs to go to. And this is the idea of how we can manage it. You need to have a specific path for each one of them that you're sending to the same URL that Gett Free API giving you, but with a specific path for each API. For new app services, you just need to add them here within the table itself. You just added access for them. Secure by 2 layers, and that's what we talked about in the beginning. Developers can control all the accesses through the management. They don't have to go for each one of them. There is only one admin can allow it here. If you want, we can, like this service can be on your on-premise, or like you can put it on cloud and you can add as much admins as you want and you can have it for your own. But for now, it's a free service that you can access it through getfreeapi.com. Why we're using Gett Free API? Gett Free API, it's a free platform, as we said, developing and managing all the API proxies in one place. Gett Free API building using PHP, jQuery optimized to give you the best functionality possible. Gett Free API is public. No need to install or download any software anywhere on cloud or on premise. That's, of course, depending on the company or enterprise how they want to use it. Platform hosted on the cloud, full encrypted, Gett Free API proxies and reverse proxies platform, which means, let's say we wanted to add a new API, and this API doesn't exist on external or doesn't exist in anywhere around, still brand new. We can depend on the same proxy, the management, to get access to create one and modify it and make sure that we can monetize it or see the dashboard how it works. Now, developers can be simpler whenever we want to give them a token. We just give them a token directly from this management. We don't have to create, each developer has his own API token that it accesses directly to the API end. Plus the ability to cache external APIs. So let's say some services, some API services, they have, let's say like fees, or actually like they charge you for each call methods. Let's say 100 calls for $1, 100 calls for 1 cent. It doesn't matter. They call you. Some of the calls going out, they give you like the same results, which is if you're getting a get ID, and that's all specification, you assign it here inside the Gett Free API, and the management needs to understand it. Only get calls can be stored as a cached. So instead of I'm sending like from Android app, the same user open his page 3-4 times, instead of going and sending it to the API within a 1 minute or 3 minutes or 5 minutes, and that's what we call indifference, like assist spike or different calls from different management systems. We can assign it that we don't want to limit him, but what we do, we can give him like access for the first time to get the information and send it back to him. If he went back again within the same 5 minutes or within the same hour, up to 1 hour, and wanted to access and get back the same information, if we send it back to the API, it's going to charge us for another call. Instead of that, we can store it in a cache inside the management and send it back to the Android app as much as he wants within an hour. If there's any update happen in this API for any data inside that what we retrieved before, this would be refreshed automatically as expired cache. So it's gonna be refreshed every hour, depend on how many calls, and you don't have to charge for 10 calls while they're getting the same results. This is the dashboard for Gett Free API. That give you like a live stream, like how many calls you got requests, you have history, you got how many tables or proxies. There's a lot of stuff you're gonna access it. This is what we're gonna do demo for. So for enterprises, this platform should be dashboard for all the enterprise, not for each one of them. So we can make it assigned for users, we can assign it for admins. It depends on how the enterprises wanted to install in their locals or on premises or cloud. And it's simply installed, it's all command lines, there's nothing needs to be worried, even themed and everything organized the way that they wanted with one step using Docker, containers, Kubernetes, whatever they want to use or host it on. We connect the first step. If we want to do the same design here, what happened? First, we connect the API management to each API once with a token or with a body, whatever we want. It depends on how we're going to call it. But we have to assign the path that it's calling it. So if this is the external API, we have to put a path. It reflects the idea of where this host is. And that specifically, if we're sending different paths from the application, we should know which API to collect information from or we send to. By clicking on the bottom, you would just be able to add the headers. As soon as you create it, you're going to get this page. And this page is going to create for you which apps can access it and what's the external link. Plus, if you want to cache, and that cache can save you for monetizing money, plus you can charge your clients if they're using your app and you don't get charged for that extra calls. API token, if exists, is going to call the authorizations. This is all JSON based and prefer to be JSON based, so it will be shared with all application. The same situation, like the same code format, is going to send to all of them. We can add extra headers that we're going to send for this link without making the all or each app of the applications can like needs these headers. So let's say like specifically for what's the response we're getting back from this link. Let's say we accept only JSON and the application should be accepting JSON and the content type should be accepted JSON. So we add here only the header. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to assign it later and we're going to show how the example works. You can assign the apps, you can add headers, the auth direct or custom, and this is depending on auth 2. And auth 2 is like the authorization using tokens, and that's using bearer. That's the main one or main reason, or like the mostly used in all API services. And custom body that we're going to share it whenever like they sent any call. So if there's basic auth and we wanted to use the basic auth body, this is where we add the extra body. That is going to go every time with any call to get back the response. An API tokens to use all for dependents app and services. Get full, I didn't mean like above, it's like, this is the main idea of the image. So give get role for each one separately. The test, let's say like this is the name, the description, different tables. We have a database assigned for users. So if we want to create a new app and we just want to give them a token that they can access different tables, we create them here. We create what's the app and what's the industry for that. And then we go and assign it for this app and we add him inside, or add the application inside the apps, which means this app allowed to access this URL or this access. The permission giving them to access is exactly what the permissions here. Later on, I'm giving more options. So I'm going to give the idea of having organization and the limit of methods. So each app has its own limit of methods. Secure two layers, going back to the point that we have multiple apps, all of them sharing getfreeapi.com /API and / the path that you picked. You don't have to change it inside the app applications here. If you want to change it here, it's a problem if it's multiple APIs. You don't know which one which one retrieve the right data. But if you send them all, just separate the APIs by different paths, you're almost there getting all the information and data that you need from the APIs without sending them directly to the API. And that's again for the security issue. And it's easier for developers to build their applications with one link than having 3 links to collect multiple times. Performance, quality. For a new API, we just connect the API, we create the cache for it. For new apps and services, we just create the app and add it for it. Secure 2 layers, developers control the API access in place instead of different places, as what we say. Extra from Gett Free API, cache your GET calls, create a new API and customize your fields as needed directly from the UI. Free of call charge, and there is no fees for any call happen to Gett Free API on the getfreeapi.com. And of course, like you can charge if you want to have it on your enterprise services and you want to have it own, separate and secure, you can buy it from me. API ability to use all methods with proxies or reverse proxies. So if we have, as I created like a new table, can be path going outside of the management system, or it's built directly on the management system. And that can give you the ability to have different APIs, even if you want to move slowly to the Gett Free API that you don't pay for other services or API services. And there's a lot, like so expensive API services that are around the market. One admin with unlimited apps and services, which means you can add as much as you want tokens for different app services. You can add them separately. And in that case, you're not going to be charged. Plus, if any app you want to block it from all APIs, you don't have to go to each API and block that token or give it access for it. This management system can give you the access that you can block it from all APIs by just deleting it from here, or remove it from the table if you don't want him to have access of one of the tables that he's not used to. So the link, I'm going to share it at the bottom or within the information for Gett Free API, and this document, it's a quick document that I just wanted to share about the functionality of the Gett Free API. Gett Free API is .com, it's secure, and it got like a good rank while it's not even like advertised. So let's say like we want to create a new account. And the new account we're gonna create it, Elayyoub, and we're gonna create it depending on Elayyoub@gmail.com. We're gonna do our password. And by one click, I'm there. No need to worry about anything. No confirmation, nothing. It's all gonna happen automated. If your IP address separately keep changing, you would get a notification. If you're trying to find out like what's going on in the back end, you'll be blocked by the user and the IP if they connected. So it's all secured by the back end too. I'm gonna add CAPTCHA for it, just for people because they believe that CAPTCHA it can hold the idea of robot. I don't believe in that. You can use some JavaScripts that it can click the secure encryptions and make sure that it can select depending on the image or depending on numbers. Sometimes it's harder for like developers, but hackers, it's easier for them. Let's say the first page I want to do is I want to create a table. Table is the proxy. So by proxy, let's say I want to create test. And this test is a new API. It doesn't exist anywhere else. Test is just for demo purposes. So just for demo purposes, what we need in test, let's say I want a title, and we're going to make it simple just for purposes, and the default is no. As soon as I create this page, it's going to create for me API, fully functional. All what you need to do is just by accessing it, you can get the opportunity to see what's going on with this table. So what we have is created date, updated date, and ID. They're automated. The title is what we created as a field. Now, as a title, I want to, let's say like I want to create something fast here, test, and I add it, it's gonna add for me test as a title. If I want to add more fields, if I want to remove a field, it's all accessible for you here within the API management. So we don't have to worry about it. Now let's say I have no apps still assigned for me. If I want to create an app, we just create a new app. And this app, we're gonna say like Android. Android, and this app industry, Android for API test. And create it. Android. Now what we're gonna depend on is we're gonna depend on the main one, which is why before the test situation, we're just gonna use the first one, which is we go to profile, and the profile is me, and we're gonna select this token. We're gonna use this token to access the Gett Free API. Now, how we can see what's going on, how we can access it, is simply it's added for each page. When we want to access it, it's gonna be our access for the test page. This is the simplest way we can find it. And now let's say we have a Postman, just to make the call for it, and we're gonna modify it depending on how the test is gonna be working. Now what we have is a free title, ID, and we wanted, let's say, to add a new field, and we want to say this field is new. All what we need to do is just add the field from here and add it, and it will be created. Plus, let's say like we wanted to add a new test, test 1, and new, no, and let's do test 4, yes. So we have like test 4 and test 1. Now for test 4 and test 1, we have them as an item inside this table or inside this proxy. If we want to check how we can access this proxy, there is just by clicking on more info about API codes. We're gonna get the information how we can use it with HTTP code, how we can use it with curl as a curl PHP. Now, for all these options, you can pick anything get handle or like can be used within your apps or services. It can explain for you what's been used, and that's what we're gonna do test for it. So right now we have in this table or in this test, we don't have any apps assigned to it. And we don't want any apps yet, but we want the main one, which is the profile. We wanted to make sure that we have this token as the one that we're gonna do the access for. And this is what we're gonna test. And let's use Postman for accessing. So right now, if we go and do the call, we should at least get the items that we created, which is 2 fields, title and new, and we created 2 items inside these fields. we want to check with what we got. We got the field new as an array for them. Now, this is a regular API system that anyone can use within the same field or within the same getfreeapi.com. Now, let's say we wanted to post a new one, and within the post, we have to create what we need to get the idea of creating a new item on this list. And by getting these calls, we're going to go back to the dashboard and see how many calls or what we did and how many times users or clients or apps used it within that period of time. So let's go back and create like we want it to be the title, and it's test 10, and we want a new, which is we accepted null. So even if we didn't add a new, it's going to be null for the others field. And we're going to say yes. So simply, we're going to create a new item and create it using the API that it's already proxied on Gett Free API. As soon as I post it, I'm getting a new ID, which is the ID that we got responded on the API. And we can create it and it give you the time that is being created. Now, to check them out, all what we need to do here is to refresh the page. So we should get the new item. Now, the best part that we involve with this Gett Free API, that you can delete it even from here. So let's say I don't want 4, I want 10, and I don't want 1, or my mistake, I got an API that I want to filter it. Now we can delete it directly from here, and this would not be reverted. If you delete it, you're gonna lose the item 100%, which is we always prefer not to have. But let's say I want to delete not new, that's it, I'm done. So if I go back to JSON and I want to get what we have in this database, we got 4 and 5, which is what we have. And this is typically API options. Now this is, you can delete, you can do, but let's say like I want to delete item 4. And this is all depending on the same headers that we have and all that explained within the information under the block. So now let's say I want to delete it and delete number 4, ID 4, and as soon as it deleted, as soon as I see it there, it should be 100% here. In our dashboard, we should be at least seeing what we did, and what options we got. Else than the timing, we have the value of request till now. Within 5 seconds, we had 9 calls that it happened. Now, let's say I can't remember what calls I did. That's why we kept involved with the field history. And now let's say we want to create a new app, and this app connected to this table. Android is not. I want to create just iPhone, got access to this one, and iPhone app 1 is always Apple Android. And let's see what their token is. And let's go back to our call and let's change the API for Android. If we check it, we shouldn't be authorized. But if we check the iPhone that we already created, a token for iPhone for this table, we should be able to access it. And we're not, because I forgot to add iPhone. So when we add iPhone here, now this iPhone access, it has access for this table, which means if I go back to our call that we have the iPhone token for it, if we send it, now we're gonna get it back. So this is the idea, is that you separate and manage your apps, not depending on the API, it's depending on your apps, depending how many apps you want. Let's say I want to add a new app, and this app, it's gonna be web service, and I really want only the iPhone, not even web service can do. Oops, okay. And we can say industry web. Now let's go back to the proxy and let's see our proxy that we're working on here. Now this proxy, it just allowed for iPhone. And if I want to add the web, I will add it. But let's do check our apps and make sure that we get the web app token. Now let's try, now if we keep sending with testing with the iPhone, it's already working. Let's test it with the web app token. And with the web app token, we don't have access and we're not authorized to use it. Now let's say I want to add my web app. I want to add it to this table and I want it to be accessible for it, or they can access. So we saved it and we go back. Now we have two of them, iPhone and web app can access this table. So if I go back again and get it, I'm going to get the information that I want. Let's say that this app right now, or the token been stolen or like lost, and I don't want this app to have access anymore. All what I need to do is just remove it from here, save it, and then if I go back, test it, it doesn't have, it's not authorized to do anything. Thank you for listening. This is Elayyoub.